This is not breaking news. This is not a scandal. This is not about one person. What if I told you that the most dangerous shift in the global balance of power is unfolding not in military arsenals, but in the quiet, slow-moving world of sovereign debt? There's a seismic shift happening right under our noses, one that threatens to unravel the very system that has held the global economy together for decades. And this isn't a future risk. This is happening right now. Imagine the second largest economy in the world, once the buyer of last resort for hundreds of billions in U.S. debt, suddenly dumping it at a pace that defies all economic logic. This isn't a mistake. It's a strategy with consequences that could leave the U.S. financial system in tatters. And it's already started. In the coming minutes, we'll dive into the data, the numbers you haven't seen, the trends you've missed, and the truths no one is willing to say out loud. And by the end, you'll understand why the question isn't if times the system will collapse, but times when asterisk, let's begin. So who's really pulling the strings here? It's not the politicians you see on TV. It's not even the so-called elites pulling the levers behind closed doors. No, the true force that controls the global system is something far slower and far more dangerous. It's debt, sovereign debt. The kind of debt that funds entire economies, that buys the trust of governments, and that ties the world's financial fate to a single piece of paper. For decades, the U.S. has been able to run massive deficits, to print money without worry, because there was always a buyer, a patient, unquestioning buyer. That buyer was China. But now, the system is breaking, and China is no longer playing by the old rules. Instead of quietly buying U.S. Treasury bonds to keep the global financial machine running, China is unloading them at a staggering pace, a pace that's starting to rattle the very foundations of that machine. And that's where things get really dangerous. Because when the second largest economy in the world stops playing the game, everyone else has to pick up the pieces or risk the entire system collapsing. But that's not even the worst part. This wasn't a sudden decision. It didn't happen overnight. The shift you're seeing, the one that's shaking the very core of the global financial system, has been brewing for years. And the most dangerous part? It was normalized. You see, back in the early 2000s, China's role was simple. Buy U.S. debt, keep the global trade engine running, help fund the U.S. deficits so the U.S. could keep buying Chinese goods. A closed loop, symbiotic. But that loop is no longer just broken. It's been times erased, asterisk. Look at the numbers. In 2013, at the peak, China held over $1.3 trillion in U.S. debt. Today, that figure has plummeted to $688 billion. That's a loss of nearly $500 billion, almost 50%. And here's the thing, you can't just erase $500 billion and pretend everything is fine. The market didn't notice at first. Slowly, over time, this change was hidden in plain sight. But now, the cracks are showing. China's massive sell-off is no accident. It's not a correction. It's a clear, deliberate shift. And the consequences? They're just beginning to unfold. And then, something happened. Something that sent shockwaves through the financial world. In late 2024, the U.S. bond market hit a historic drawdown. Interest rates were volatile. Bond prices fell. It was a bloodbath in the markets. And in the middle of all this, China did the unthinkable. They times sold asterisk, $12 billion in a single month. This wasn't just a minor adjustment. This wasn't a small rebalancing. No, China didn't just cut its exposure to U.S. debt. It was a full-on aggressive liquidation. And they did it at a loss. In the world of finance, that's not just bad practice. That's a red flag. If China wasn't facing a liquidity crisis, if they weren't in desperate need of cash, why sell at a loss? The answer isn't pretty. Because they're no longer looking at U.S. debt as an asset. They're seeing it for what it really is, a liability. And that decision, it's going to haunt us all. This isn't a random decision. It's a carefully calculated move. And behind this decision is a financial mechanism most people never see. Let's break it down. When China decided to liquidate their U.S. Treasury bonds, they weren't just reducing their exposure to the U.S. economy. They were sending a message to the world, a message that said, asterisk, we no longer trust this system, asterisk. But why is this such a big deal? Because for decades, China was the largest buyer of U.S. debt. They held massive amounts of bonds, effectively funding America's deficits. And in return, China got a stable, predictable store of value in U.S. treasuries. It was a symbiotic relationship. But now, that relationship is over. And this isn't just a loss for China. It's a systemic breakdown. Because without China, there's no one left to buy the debt that's being created. No one left to fund the U.S. deficits. The burden is now falling on the allies. The UK, Europe, they're being forced to pick up the slack. They're stepping in as the buyers of last resort. And it's coming at a cost. But here's the thing, this isn't just a financial shift, it's a political one. And just when you thought it couldn't get worse, it does. Because here's the thing about the system, it doesn't just times break asterisk, it implodes. As China accelerates its sell-off, a critical shift happens in the bond market, prices are falling, yields are rising. But here's the catch, the US bond market isn't collapsing, not yet. Why? Because the allies are stepping in. The UK, Europe, Japan, they're buying up the debt that China is dumping. They're acting as the shock absorbers, keeping the system from unraveling. But this isn't the free market at work. It's political pressure. It's financial conscription. Washington is twisting arms, telling its allies, asterisk, if you don't step in, the whole financial system goes under asterisk. But there's a problem. The UK and Europe don't have the financial capacity to absorb this kind of debt. They're already struggling. Their economies are weak. They're drowning in their own debt. And yet, they're being forced to swallow even more of America's, but there's a breaking point. And it's coming fast. Now, let's talk about times the person watching this right now. Because this isn't just some abstract financial game being played by distant governments. This is about your future. Imagine a world where the global financial system, one that has been stable for your entire life, suddenly starts to unravel. The consequences won't be abstract for you. They will be real. Think about your savings, your retirement plans, your mortgage rates, your job. The world of easy credit, low interest rates, and stable markets, that world is already fading. As China's sell-off continues, bond yields skyrocket, mortgage rates shoot up, your cost of living rises. The price of everything, from groceries to energy, becomes more expensive. And this isn't something that will take years to happen. It's happening times now, asterisk. The consequences of this financial shift are already filtering down to the everyday person. So ask yourself, what happens when this shift accelerates? What happens when the bond market crashes and the US government has to print more money to cover its debt? The answer? Inflation. And not just a little, a lot. What happens when this financial disaster isn't just contained in the US? The truth is, it's already spreading. This is no longer just an American issue. It's a global one. When China dumped its U.S. Treasury bonds, it wasn't just a blow to Wall Street. It was a shot across the bow for every global economy that relies on the stability of the dollar. China's decision has sent ripples through Europe, Japan, and the UK. Their financial systems already on the edge are now being dragged into the mess. These economies are being forced to pick up the slack, buying U.S. debt at a time when their own markets are weakening. But there's more. The repercussions are starting to spread to emerging markets, to the farthest reaches of the globe. As the dollar weakens, global trade becomes more expensive, the cost of borrowing skyrockets. Countries that rely on U.S. debt, countries that need cheap financing to grow, are now facing their own financial crises. This isn't just a U.S. problem. This is a global disaster waiting to unfold. So, where does this all lead? What happens next? We've got three possible paths ahead of us, and none of them are easy. Asterisk, asterisk, path 1, adjustment, asterisk, asterisk. In this scenario, the global system adapts. The US financial system absorbs the shock, adjusts its policies, and eventually finds a new equilibrium. The dollar weakens, bond yields rise, but the system continues, though under new strains. The US might need to change how it operates, but it survives. This would be a painful road, but not a catastrophic one. Asterisk, asterisk, path 2, erosion, asterisk, asterisk. This path is slower, more insidious. The cracks in the system keep widening. The US government struggles to finance its debt. Inflation continues to rise, and the global economy slows. No one pulls the trigger. It's just a slow, grinding collapse of the financial structures we've relied on for decades. The system doesn't collapse in an instant, but it erodes until nothing is left to hold it together. Asterisk, asterisk. Path 3, rupture, asterisk, asterisk. This is the worst case scenario. In this path, the system doesn't adjust. It doesn't erode, it ruptures. The global financial order, once built on the trust in US debt, shatters. Countries abandon the dollar, the bond market crashes, the US faces a debt crisis so massive it can no longer recover. This is the end of the world as we know it. The financial system collapses in real time. Which of these paths will we take? No one can say for sure. But the signs are clear. We're already on one of these roads. The question is just how far will it go before the brakes are applied? The truth is, we don't know how this will end. We're standing on the edge of a precipice, but the ground below is still hidden in shadow. We've seen the cracks in the system, the signs of an impending collapse, but will the world find a way to patch things together before it all falls apart? Or will this be the moment we look back on as the point of no return? Here's what we do know. The system is changing. The US is no longer the safe haven it once was. China is moving quickly, and the allies are being dragged along for the ride. The global financial order is teetering. And as it does, you need to ask yourself, how prepared are you for a world where the old system no longer works? The changes are happening now, and by the time the dust settles, it might be too late to act. Don't wait until it's too late. Keep watching, keep asking questions. The next chapter is already being written, and you don't want to miss it.